Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This is Josh Allen with Rise Energy, episode number 1, recording here in the Wonder Tree Studios. And we're about to jump into a subject you had no idea would fascinate you. And that is energy, electricity, and how do we keep the lights on and the air conditioning blowing. Welcome to Rise Energy Podcasting. I've got a special guest today that I am so excited to introduce and bring into this conversation on a subject that, quite frankly, every single one of us really should pay attention to. So please welcome to the Rise Energy Podcast, Wonder Tree Studio, Nick Quintana with Generac.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Love to talk about energy and all things energy solutions. So this is a perfect platform.
Well, and before we jump into the entertaining subject of energy and where this world is, little backgrounds on ourselves. Nick, I understand, is a Lubbock native, may have even graduated from one of our local high schools.
That's right. Yeah, a Monterey graduate, 2009. So after graduation, attended the great Texas Tech University, the Renewable Energy School. That's right. Hopefully, I don't know when you're listening to this, but hopefully we beat TCU tonight as we record.
Defending runner-ups. That's right.
Last year.
Although not as a successful year this year.
Yeah, not looking as positive this year.
Can't say the same thing about the Red Raiders. We'll stop that conversation.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. I'm just going to enjoy the game.
That's right.
Yeah. But appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, so a little background. After graduating from Texas Tech University, I got into commodities trading. It firstly started with agricultural commodities such as corn, cotton, obviously the lifeblood of Lubbock, Texas.
That's right.
Agriculture. From then, I moved on to ethanol and other energy trading and risk management. I worked for a number of retail energy suppliers as well as a small cap private equity firm. Doing energy trading and risk management.
Nice. The million-dollar question for us here today, we'll start with, is have you ever paid LP&L for electricity in your life?
For the first 22 years of it, I mean, maybe I wasn't the one signing the check. It might have been my mom or dad, but have definitely had plenty of experience with LP&L.
Okay, and we'll dive into this a little bit more, but since we're mentioning the name now, Lubbock Power and Light is a municipally owned, which means city-owned, power entity, right?
Yes, that's correct. And as we start to go through this transition of LP&L entering the ERCOT region, they will become a TDSP, or Transmission Distribution Service Provider.
Say that 5 times as fast as you can, and you're the winner. So I think we're just going to dive right into it. Josh Allen here. I'll give a little background on myself. For those of you that don't know me, I have now lived in Lubbock for 22 years. Met a pretty girl in college in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who promised me she was not moving back to her hometown, Lubbock. I was a Dallas big city kid, like to say one of those snobby, arrogant big city kids who thinks everything revolves around the big city. Little did I know, because we moved to Lubbock, how incredible Lubbock and the community in West Texas would be for so many things. And Nick, I could not stop preaching and cheerleading to the rest of Texas, to the rest of the country and the world, really, how great it is to live, have a family, be part of community. For business purposes, how incredible our Lubbock community fosters entrepreneurial small business. It's so impressive. And now we sit here today, kind of this new intersection of where Lubbock is going and how Lubbock business intersects into the new energy world.
Absolutely. And right there with you. I'm Lubbock's biggest advocate. I now live in Austin, Texas.
What?
Home of the evil empire, but I make it back as often as possible because I tell you what, my hometown and the people here, you don't get any better. Just the nicest, most genuine. There's no place like it, honestly.
Well, and this probably feeds into, Nick, a big reason why Rise Energy is trying to play the role, and I'll even say trying to lead in this new energy transition, because I recognize as a Lubbock citizen, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner in our community, that people care. People care what takes place in our backyard here. And these changes that are taking place are fairly foreign to most people. And I think we've seen often those who don't have the real sincere concern and care for community, for friends and families, can often take advantage of the ignorance that's out there. So a really big push and vision for Rise Energy is to be a source of education, be a source of information.
Absolutely.
To be a source of, hey, you may not want to work with us directly, and that's okay, but at least let us help you navigate, be informed, and the phrase I always use is, we want you as a household, as a family, as a business, a nonprofit organization, to make wise decisions around your energy, because right now, and here's drop the mic time, every single customer of Lubbock Power and Light has to make a decision and sign, you ready for it? A contract.
That's right.
Not something people are familiar with, right?
That's correct. And, I think you touched on a few important points there. And one is that Lubbock is in a very unique position now that they're entering into ERCOT and will have electric choice. They're in a unique position. Lubbock is in a unique position to really make the best decisions for the city and the businesses and the residents that live here and call this place their home, to really set the path forward and start to rid yourselves of these headaches when it comes to energy needs at all, or whatever, was happening while under LP&L, where you didn't have a choice in what your electric rate looked like or how long it lasted, whether that be for your home or business. That's all about to change.
Well, and let's just stop right there, because I think I don't want to make any assumptions on what the audience may know or not know. So we'll kind of just really basic history and background. The state of Texas is pretty unique to the rest of the country.
That's right.
I think we'd all agree Texas is unique to the rest of the country. We like our independence, and that includes our energy access and our energy grid. And so I think close to 20 years ago or more, ERCOT and the freedom of choice was established in most of the Texas population centers, certainly the Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, et cetera, has opted in and has been a part of this, we'll call it deregulated freedom of choice. Whereas in Lubbock, we have one utility, Lubbock Power and Light, or if you're in the south part of the city and other parts, maybe South Plains Electric Co-op, maybe Excel, but you have no choice. Right. So kind of just explain just really generically what ERCOT is and what that freedom of choice is actually bringing to Lubbock citizens and LP&L customers.
Yeah, definitely. And you nailed it on the head. Deregulation of the electricity market occurred early 2000s, and that's when some businessmen in Houston decided that the old utility model was no longer working for the people of Texas. And that's when a utility owns every piece of the energy business, from the generation to the midstream, which would be the poles and wires, all the way to the actual marketing or sales of the rate plan scheduling for the customers, where the customer does not get a choice. It's, here's your rate, this is what you'll pay. Maybe it's time of use. It's dependent on how much energy you use at certain times.
You want the lights on and the air conditioning on? Pay our price.
Exactly. You did not have a choice of where you got your energy, what the energy stack was made of. And when I say energy stack, I mean, was it inclusive of renewable energy? Was it all just... Am
I buying all coal energy, natural gas, nuclear, wind, solar?
Had no insight into what it was you were buying. You just knew that you paid an exorbitant amount to flip on a light switch and have your lights come on.
And you hoped, and I would say largely, the energy was available, but not always.
That's correct.
It's like, oh, what happened to the power? It's kind of getting cold in here.
That's right. That's right. So, energy not always available. As we know, it is a finite resource. It is not infinite. So there are times when demand goes above what there is for supply. And in that instance, those lights don't come on. But with the Electricity Reliability Council of Texas, that is ERCOT, what you said just a couple minutes ago, that we like our independence, that couldn't be shown more than through ERCOT, because we are our own electrical grid. We are not tied in to the broader United States grid at all. So that means that we cannot import or export power should there be a lapse in supply, whether that be a power plant that trips offline or just higher than expected demand. We cannot bring in resources from outside of the state of Texas. We don't have any federal government oversight. The Department of Energy does not have any oversight over ERCOT.
Which I think a lot of people in Texas would say kudos
to
being more in control of the markets.
Control. I like that you said control, because that's exactly what happens when you enter into ERCOT. You the end use consumer get more control over what it is you're buying, how you're buying it, and really, I mean, what matters to you most? If that's green energy, if that's just the cheapest rate you can find, whatever it is that matters to you most, that's what you get when you have electric choice.
Which I think fundamentally, most of us would say it's hugely attractive.
Absolutely.
The problem or the challenge that accompanies now the ability to control and choose is knowledge.
Right.
Correct. Who actually has the knowledge to educate the marketplace on what they should choose, what's good for them, what's not good for them, and then is the provider of that education and information, do they really have your best interest?
Absolutely.
And that's hard to discern. That's hard to know because we like to take people at their face value. Like, he's telling me the truth.
Right. And you hope in every interaction that that's the case. Unfortunately, I think we all know it not always is. And especially when a new market such as this opens up, it creates the opportunity for, let's call it, less than savory characters to come in and try and make a quick buck by taking advantage of that ignorance around the market. And I'm sure, as the people of Lubbock have already seen, there are multiple sales groups that have already come into town, multiple energy groups, and if you talk to each one of them, you're probably going to hear a different thing from each one you talk to. Oh, we have the best pricing. Oh, we can leverage all of these suppliers to get you the best price. Or we have the cleanest energy. Or we have the best back-end customer support. There are so many things you hear out there, a lot of which are untrue. And unfortunately, that is just, that's the case with any new market like we talked about. But I think what would behoove customers most is getting with an advisor such as a Rise Energy, who has the experience in these markets, who knows the players, the suppliers in these markets, and is able to leverage each and every one of those to ultimately get them to compete for your business. And that is probably the one best part about electric choice.
Yep.
Is that you can leverage all of these groups to compete for your business. And when they do that, it drives the price down. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. I think what I want to kind of even point out is ERCOT has enabled in this freedom of choice marketplace a certain third-party representative who they kind of call an energy advisor and an energy broker. Correct. And so I kind of like to maybe expound just a little bit because I think there are some comparisons that consumers are familiar with in which they are already using intermediary brokers to help them navigate other consumer choices. I think an insurance broker is a good example.
Right. Correct.
We engage insurance brokers every day for health insurance because Lord knows we don't know all the different plans out there.
That's right.
What's beneficial for my company, for our employees, and so forth. Your property, casualty, auto, homeowners insurance. Now, you may call your Allstate insurance, but even that broker is going to go to his provider and navigate all the choices for you. Or you may go to an independent insurance broker who's going to go shop all of the insurance companies. And so I think using that as an example, very few consumers are actually writing a check and paying that insurance agent or insurance broker for their services.
That's right. That is a perfect comparison, honestly. And I think as we are all feeling the ramifications of higher insurance costs, that is something that is also occurring in the energy world. The more that renewables come online, and dispatchable resources are starting to be retired as we start to phase out, very dirty coal and things like that. Energy pricing in that transition, it experiences fluctuations. And right now we're at a point where energy pricing in the state of Texas is higher than it's been in probably a decade. And so for your customers, the same way that they would approach that sort of insurance broker to guide them on what are all of the plans out there, what are the benefits of those plans, this is the service that Rise Energy can provide for you because they do have the relationships with all of those groups and the knowledge behind it to understand what are the benefits of all of these plans. Sometimes the cheapest plan is not always the best one, and sometimes the greenest plan is not always the best one. So to have that advisor on your side to help you guide you through the process takes, the guesswork out of your hands.
That's
which
right.
is ultimately what all of us want as consumers.
And the customer is not having to, and I'm going to use the phrase, pay
Correct.
the advisor. built in, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but built into virtually every one of the plans that a customer is going to choose, whether it's residential or commercial customer, built into that plan is baked in the fee that would go to any of the advisors, whether it's an in-house person working for TXU or whether it's a third-party broker advisor. Am I correct? And hence, the customer's already paying for the fee. They just need to take advantage of the services that they're already paying for.
You're absolutely right. And honestly, the fee is nominal. It's, you don't even really feel it whenever you're paying your energy bill. And that fee is what is getting you to drive down those prices and is giving you the best choice out there. Because when Rise Energy leverages all of the relationships with the suppliers, they're going to show you all of the options you have open to you. And ultimately, you're going to get the choice. The choice. You get to pick what you want to go with.
Well, and I'm going to stop and say I can't speak for every ERCOT approved energy advisor broker out there. I certainly can't speak for them. But I think I can say with a pretty high level of confidence that Rise Energy is, I believe, the only locally owned, locally operated energy advisor in Lubbock. Now, there's a handful of companies that have come into Lubbock recently. They may have even employed some Lubbock residents and citizens to work on their behalf. And I certainly appreciate that, we're putting some Lubbock citizens to work. But I guess I'm emphasizing that really, if someone signs up with another plan that really doesn't benefit them, that company may not be there to really stand behind it. And I've said this from the beginning, our reputation, our name, our character, our integrity is worth more than trying to push someone into some plan that's just going to benefit us and compensate something to us. We really have the vision and heart to serve our community, and I'll say that unashamedly, and we're here to really make sure customers make the right choice. And I wish every company had that same motivation, but you've seen this industry. Often certain brokers are motivated by, I'm going to get paid more by sending you to this company.
That's absolutely right. And as you alluded to, we can't speak to every brokerage out there, and we don't know what ultimately their end game is. But I think what sets you guys apart is what you just talked about. You are here locally. You're everybody's neighbor. You're in their backyard.
Right.
Y'all go to the same grocery store, and y'all all ultimately have the same goal, which is to raise your families and provide, and ultimately to do that in the best way you can. And I think, being an advisor to your friends and neighbors is one of the best ways you can do that. Because when you have your neighbor or, and I say neighbor, but, the group here in Lubbock with you, they don't want to do anything that is going to make their neighbor angry at them. Nobody wants that.
Well, and Lubbock, and probably true for a lot of other smaller communities, is you don't take care of someone one time and that reputation gets out. And
that's right.
You're not going to have opportunity to do business again. And,
exactly.
And I would never sacrifice future opportunity to serve people just for short-term gain. Let's dive into this real quickly, and that is on the residential front, all right, without really getting too into the weeds. Are there a massive amount of differences in residential plans, or are there just, really some basic ones and you're kind of settling into them? I think it's the commercial that I want to talk a little more around some of the different variabilities on the commercial side as opposed to residential.
Yep, and that's a very good point. Well, most residential homes have very similar usage profiles. The peak load happens when the family gets home from work and from school. Most of the rates when it comes to a residential type of facility, they are going to be very similar. You might find, a couple of cents different or hundreds of a cent difference. But ultimately, they're going to be all within the same price range. And what you're really choosing there is the group that you want to be with, who you think has the best customer support. And there are resources online and elsewhere where residential customers can go, such as Power to Choose, that'll bring up multiple plans for you to be able to look at, essentially like an online broker.
And I think with residential, you can opt in and out of plans with a little more ease, correct?
That's correct, yes. So a lot of times there is an early termination fee, but it's a very minimal amount. So to change a contract, even halfway through or something is not a super painful process. you do want to get out ahead of it because you don't want to be sent to, a provider of last resort, and that's who you'll get sent to if you don't make a choice. But in that instance, there's a lot of times they're not necessarily incentivized to give you the best rate there. So, you want to utilize one of these systems online or something to go through that to find a plan that ultimately works for you and your family. And that can be, nights and weekends or what have you. But really, there's
you
small
mentioned nights and
differences.
weekends. I remember because growing up in Dallas-Fort Worth, where there was the freedom to choose and ERCOT and so forth. My mom, she grew up on an Iowa farm, so she was always very, very conservative in usage of stuff and consuming of things. And she signed up for a nights and weekends plan, which, if you don't know, at that time, and it maybe is still true today, right? I haven't researched this exhaustively. Effectively, at some evening hour, call it 7, 8, 9 p.m., energy prices shrank. It reduced. It got really low.
Correct. It's like a time of use rate.
And so what she did was she cranked the air conditioning up at 9 o'clock at night and ran that air conditioner. I'm not kidding you.
Froze y'all out of the house.
I'd have friends come over and like, why is your house so stinking cold? And at the time, I didn't fully understand it, but she'd run that air conditioner and freeze the house down to like the 50s. And then at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, she'd shut it off, and the air conditioner would not run for the rest of the hours in the day. The house stayed cool. I mean, largely.
Right. Yep.
By 5 o'clock, it may start to get a little warm. But she was taking advantage of the incentive that plan offered, which is you have a cheaper cost of energy if you use, and I think if you don't know, the HVAC system is the biggest energy use for most households.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And even in a lot of commercial and industrial businesses, that HVAC load, or what it pulls energy-wise, is the biggest energy hog in any facility. So you're absolutely right there. When it's hot outside and you crank that AC up to as high as it'll go, that's where you're consuming the most energy, and that's what makes that bill skyrocket.
And so in some ways, as people begin to navigate some of these options and choices, if a family wants to control their costs and enroll and sign up for a plan that incentivizes varied energy uses, that could be attractive for them.
Exactly. And that is now what you have open to you now that Lubbock is in this deregulated market. You have the choice to figure out what is best for you and your family.
One other plan that I saw is going to be coming out, which is actually a pretty new, technologically advanced plan, and that is if you have an electric vehicle, one of the companies, I think it's David's Energy, they have a plan whereby you can enroll into their plan and they will charge your car, as long as it's plugged into your house, to your charging port. They'll pick the time to charge your car.
Right.
Based upon when energy prices in the market are lower. So assuming I get home at 5 o'clock, I plug it in, it may not start charging then because I've enrolled in a plan in which my energy provider is paying attention to the market and going, let's wait to charge that till 11 p.m. at night. We know you only need about 3 hours of charge time. And so that to me, as someone who owns an electric vehicle, also has solar, so I'm kind of offsetting, electric vehicle charging is a significant energy use as well. So that's something that probably is not applicable to a lot of people, but it's an example of some of the new options and tools to help you better control and manage.
Yep, you're absolutely right there. And I think you touched on a few important points, is that as we start to transition, more and more things are becoming electric. As you talked about electric vehicles, we're now starting to see a lot more electric stoves, electric HVAC, more things are going electric as opposed to being run by gas or anything else. And with that comes higher energy expenses, obviously. But with this new choice that consumers now have, there are creative ways, exactly what you talked about with the plan with David Energy. There are creative ways to optimize how you use energy that will do two things for you. It'll make sure, obviously your lights come on, everything is charged, but also by optimizing that time of use or when you use energy, you're also lowering your costs because, as you alluded to, it's much cheaper to charge your car overnight when there's less demand. As demand falls, so do prices. Yep. Just with any other market, just typical supply and demand. So now that there's choice and you're not locked into a completely fixed rate from a utility that you can do nothing about, you can leverage when you use your big energy hog items, your washer and your dryer, your HVAC, your electric vehicle charger. And if you just want to set it and forget it, there are plans out there that benefit you as well. You can pick a fully fixed plan at the cheapest rate you can find and never have to worry about it again.
But that, again, that's the beauty, that there are a certain subset of customers who geek out and really love the creativity and control in finding what works for their household. And so that's something I think we as a company want to help enable that. And before we shift here to kind of the next wave of where energy is moving, I want to make sure customers understand kind of where our timelines are here in Lubbock. Lubbock Power and Light released, I think, kind of some final guidelines around things, and we're now sitting here in November. Holidays are approaching us, and effectively, beginning right now, especially for commercial customers, Rise Energy can begin to get your energy profile by having you sign an LOA, what's called a letter of authorization. That allows us, it gives us permission to go to LP&L and collect your energy data. And then we take that energy data, that energy profile, provide it, give it to all of the various companies who want to go shop on your behalf. But here's the time frames I really want everyone to pay attention to. Beginning in January, that is when the contract signing season or time frame begins.
The window opens.
And that window will not be open forever. That window will close, I believe, end of March. And Nick alluded to it earlier. If you as a customer do not sign a contract, if you choose to not take control in the independence and the freedom you have, and I want to make that clear, you will have a provider, but it's a provider of last resort. And you are dropped in a bucket of 3 different providers. And Nick, are you given the best rate plans if you get dropped in that last provider bucket?
No, you're definitely not. It kind of goes back to that old utility model is I can charge this customer whatever I want at this point because they didn't take the steps to go out and choose what it was they did want. So instead of locking in a 2-year fixed rate at 9-10 cents, you're going to be in a variable rate that can jump from 10 cents to 20 cents, really at the whim of the company that was ultimately taking over your account. So I do want to emphasize making a choice before that end deadline in March is very pivotal. You will be able to make it after then, should you be put to a provider of last resort.
Good point. Yep.
But you do want to get out ahead of it.
That's right.
I want to emphasize that, getting out ahead of it is ultimately going to benefit you most.
Well, and I'm going to take the last few minutes as we wind this down to tease and begin to introduce why Nick and I are so excited about the future of energy solutions being connected into the ERCOT grid, the Texas marketplace. And that is what I'm going to kind of describe as, not only do we have the power to choose an energy plan that can give us a little more control, we now can begin to deploy. And this is what Rise Energy has so much vision around doing. We can begin to deploy on behalf of customers. And specifically, I'm focusing around the commercial, industrial, hospitality, nonprofit customers, where your energy costs are eating up more and more of your budgets.
Yep, one of your biggest operational expenses.
One of your, you don't have control of it. We now can begin to deploy energy assets such as solar panels, such as generators, batteries, of which Generac is one of the biggest producers, longest standing brands in this country. And so I'm going to kind of just pass it over to you, and we could talk about this for a long time, and we're not going to, but kind of give me some of the highlights. What is opportunistic in today's market with taking advantage of these solar battery generator assets today?
Yep, and I'm so glad you brought this up. I am here as a representative of Generac. Generac is a company 65 years old that has created power systems since its inception. And what you are alluding to is those assets behind the meter, the solar panels, the generators, the batteries. What you're able to do there is essentially leverage these assets to participate in the market. So you're not just an end-use consumer at that point, but you are actively participating in the wholesale energy market by reducing the amount of demand you have when you have those solar panels on your roof. Those are going to lower your consumption over the lifespan of around 25 years? It's exactly the same with a natural gas or Tier 4 final generator. I want to make sure that I emphasize that. It has to be relatively clean to be able to participate in the market.
And relatively clean meaning natural gas. And I'm just wondering out here in West Texas, is there much natural gas we can access?
That's a good question.
Wow, I think we do have a lot of that. So
Right.
You're telling me that in West Texas, we a lot of us like to high five our natural resources. And we have incredible natural resources we can leverage and monetize.
That's absolutely right. So when you put a natural gas generator or a battery or a solar system on your facility, what you're then able to do is monetize these assets, what you just said. And how is it you do that? There are multiple ways. And not just, actually generating revenue, but you can provide yourself with huge cost savings by reducing your demand charges. We call it demand charge mitigation. We also can enroll you in what is called demand response, which are programs that compensate customers for reducing their energy consumption during emergency conditions. I know Lubbock was still in the Southwest Power Pool when Winter Storm Uri happened in 2021. Well, I lived in Dallas and was without power, my wife and I, for an entire week.
7 days?
7 days.
No
we had
power.
to throw everything out of our refrigerator. We were surviving by a flashlight in our living room.
This is the 21st century we're talking about?
The 21st century in the greatest country in the world.
In the greatest state in the world.
That's right. And we didn't have power for 7 days. Had we had a backup generator or a battery or even some solar panels to charge that battery, we would have been able to keep the lights on. And I can't begin to tell you, after 2 days with no power, you would do just about anything to make sure those lights.
And I'm
turn
going to
on.
stop. The last thing I ever want to do is be a fear monger and point to negative. But I do believe in having your eyes wide open.
Correct.
In the world we live in, and recognize some of the challenges that we're living through. And LPNL has kind of made it clear that when we join the ERCOT market, it will also enter us into some of the potential volatility.
Correct.
In reliance and resiliency. They mention the words blackouts and brownouts.
Yep, rolling blackouts.
I just say this to people. We really, fortunately, and I'm grateful to say, we really haven't had to endure much blackouts or brownouts, lack of power. But if your business, if your organization, like a lot of us, need to have the lights on, the air conditioning running, the machines running, and you cannot afford downtime. This is one of those time frames where not only, as Nick has described, can these assets lower some of your high energy costs.
Right.
Not only can you monetize them for potential revenue on your income statements, but it virtually ensures you of reliance, resiliency of power when you need it.
That's right. The intrinsic value that comes with it is that power quality support, that resiliency, that redundancy to ensure that you are never without. So that value being the upfront value, but then behind the scenes, you are able to reduce your costs and generate revenue with an asset that is keeping those lights on for you. And I just want to touch on, one statistic that you had or that you mentioned, that potential for rolling blackouts is now very much a potential. One thing, so Texas population has grown 25% in the past 5 years.
No question.
Dispatchable power plants have grown 1.5%, and we're actually retiring old, dirty, less efficient coal plants very quickly. So those are the ones that can ramp up quickly. So dispatchable power, 1.5%, a population that's grown 25%.
Basically, more people, more stuff, more electricity, and not enough electricity being generated to meet that demand.
That's correct. Texas alone set 10 new demand records this past summer.
Yeah, if you saw any news articles this summer, you saw ERCOT going, can you please use less energy from 3 to 8 p.m.? Like,
That's right.
Shut your AC off, maybe, hatefully. It's a challenge. I want to kind of wrap up with the prettiest bow, and this, I get to inject my financial brain here because if you don't know, I'm a former CPA, and I kind of look at the world through a financial lens. Okay.
Yep.
So not only are we entering into a market where you do get the freedom to choose your plan, and Rise Energy, Generac, and some of our other partners are helping customers to understand these new energy solutions, which, as we've already said, can put assets on your facility, your business, your organization that reduces costs, that can potentially be monetized for revenue. But here's the kicker. Here's what I love most about it. We now are living in a world where our government has passed legislation that is massively incentivizing, dare I say, even compensating the end customer for the adoption and use of these solar, battery, and generator assets. And I could talk a long time about this. In fact, one thing that we really do is we build the financial models that help you as a customer understand what would it look like if we acquired generator assets, battery assets, solar assets. But there's programs with the USDA where they're paying, how much are they paying upwards of?
They're paying upwards of 50% of
50%
total
of
project costs.
And there's Proposition 7 right now, and
the new Texas Energy Fund, which we're assuming will pass on the 7th of November, which is going to incentivize up to $500 per kilowatt backup power systems for facilities that promote community health, safety, and wellness.
Lot of you here locally, you would be shocked at how the massive incentives that are already floating out in the marketplace. And that's what we're trying to do, is to educate customers on these new energy solutions, helping you to understand the financial modeling around, okay, you're going to write a check to someone for energy. My vote is to say, why not keep some of that money for yourself? Why not even pay yourself for energy that you're going to already consume and take advantage of what the government's giving you?
That's absolutely right. Why as us end-use consumers, our businesses, our homes, why should we not take advantage of those tax credits? Instead of the big, huge energy companies, let us take advantage of it. And this program gives you that opportunity. And on top of it, energy independence.
And that's the word I want to end on today. And that is at Rise Energy, we love West Texas. We love our citizens. And I think we all value the independence, the freedom from being forced to do something. And now we're living in a world that gives you those options. So, Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed being here. This was a great conversation.
Absolutely. We'll probably bring you back on as we dive into more things. Thanks for joining us. Episode 1.
Thanks, guys.